Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us tonight for Can't We All Just Get Along? Making Cooperation Thrive in Any Classroom. My name is Dawn, and I'll be taking you through the webinar today. I'll also be sending out a recording a day or so after. And then we also have our behind the scenes guru, Robin. Hi, Robin.
Hi, guys. Thanks for joining us.
Awesome. So Robin's there. If you have any questions, any tech issues at all, go ahead and just send her a note in the chat box. And I also provided you with the resources, the strategies, the tips, the different types of tools I'm going over during this webinar is in the handout section of your the webinar management tool there. So go ahead and take a look at that as you see fit. And we are going to get started with a poll. So Robin's going to pull a poll up here. I'd love to see who is on the line. If you would kindly go ahead and select the grade level you teach. And just to let you know that all the strategies and tools I'm going to share today are really applicable for any grade level. So where are we at, Robin?
All right, so looks like we have an even split. Lower elementary, upper elementary, and middle school are all 33%. And we have 17% high school and 25% other or admin.
Fantastic. So we have a really great representation across the grade level. So thank you so much for that. Our webinar today is sponsored by Blue Apple Projects. These projects were built to engage students, teach content, all while making the world a better place. Each project includes the project plan and supplies that you need, online options, so regardless of the environment you're teaching in, the real-world connections, your cross-curricular content, and collaboration options. And because you are viewing the webinar either live or the recorded webinar, you have the opportunity to receive 10% off your next project. Use the coupon code webinar at blueappleteacher.org. I wanted to share with you something that I've been shamefully binging the last few weeks, and that's the Great British Baking Show. And the reason I wanted to share that with you is because every time I watch in each season, and I'm on season 8 already, is I find that these 12 bakers who are in this reality baking competition are so incredibly supportive of each other. They truly want to see each other succeed, even though each one of them is vying for that ultimate star baker. And just the other day, I was watching an episode where a baker was struggling with her hand-raised pie and couldn't get it out of the tin. And the baker next to her came over there and was helping her. And she whispered to him, is this allowed? And he said, make them stop me. Even though that was preventing him from finishing his work, and there's a time pressure there and could cost him his star bakership, he still wanted to help her and support her. And there's just so many examples of that throughout the show that made me think about my classroom and our students as they collaborate, as they're working towards a common good, and wanting them to see the value in everybody in their group, the value that every person brings, the value that they bring, and that interdependency that they have towards a common goal. I also wanted to share with you, this is a quote from, he's the director of our epigenetics group at the Research Institute, the Van Andel Research Institute in Grand Rapids. They study diseases, cancer, epigenetics, neurodegenerative diseases. And this is Dr. Popsicilik. And he said this so poignantly, and I just wanted to share it with you, is there will never be another groundbreaking scientific discovery by a single individual. So think about the more recent discoveries in technology, in science. I think about the International Space Station, 16 countries working together over 10 years to put this orbiting lab, to make this a reality. I think about the vaccine work that has been happening recently, and these companies, these pharmaceutical companies have been working both together within their company, but with other companies across their countries or across the world to make this a reality. And it's so true. We know collaboration, cooperation is so important in our classroom. So how can we make sure that we are creating this rock star cooperative learning experiences for our students? So today we're going to look at really two areas. First is 3 ways with 8 strategies included and how you can foster rockstar cooperative learning in your classroom. And then looking at 6 tech tools to make distance learning more collaborative. So before we jump into that content, I'm curious to find out what your current environment is. So Robin's going to throw up a poll here. Are you fully in person? Are you hybrid? Or are you fully remote?
Yep, so we have 50% that are fully remote, 29% fully in person, and then 21% hybrid.
Okay, so the majority are remote, and we do have some in person and hybrid. I'm going to follow up to that question. How many times have you had to transition your learning environment this year? Robin, if you want to go ahead and open up that poll.
It looks like majority of people, so 44% have not transitioned at all.
Okay.
And then actually it's 19%, 19%. We have 19% at 1 time, 19% at 2 times, and then 19% at 4+.
Okay, wow. So almost 20% have had to transition more than 4 times.
Yep.
Wow, that's a challenge. You know, a challenge for you and in your planning, but also a challenge for the students. And you know, whether you have or have not transitioned, it's just been a struggle. And so we're thinking about cooperation and collaboration. So even if you are in person, it looks different because of social distancing, sharing of supplies. So the strategies, the tips, the resources I'm going to share this evening really work in any situation, and we're going to talk through that. So let's take a look at the 3 ways that you can foster rockstar cooperative learning. And this really just made me chuckle, but it is true, right? It resonates, is that in every group project, there's one person that does 99% of the work. One person says they're going to help out, but they don't. One person that is there at the beginning, but for some reason disappears and comes at the end and puts their name on it. And one person's there the whole time, but has no idea what's going on. So how can we change that? How can we make our groups cooperative, interdependent, and synergistic? So the first way to foster that rockstar cooperative learning is to create robust teams. Well, what do I mean by robust teams? Well, there are 4 essential characteristics for a robust team, and this comes out of the book Group Work That Works from Paul Vermette and Cynthia Klein. And they indicate the first characteristics. We want to keep those teams small, roughly 2 to 4. And we want to also make sure that we account for diversity. Now, diversity in culture, race, ethnicity, gender, but also diversity in thought, in motivation, in interests. There's a lot of ways to account for diversity in your groups. We also want to make sure that they're long-term. Now, because accounting for diversity, it takes time. There's intentionality put behind those teams. So we can't be changing those up every week. But we also want our groups to build community. And that doesn't happen overnight. That takes time. So think about those long-term types of authentic learning experiences you can do with your students and have them work cooperatively on those, like project-based learning. And lastly, is they need to be teacher initiated because of that intentionality piece, accounting for diversity. And that's not always easy to do. So I'm going to take you through some ways in which that can help you to create those diverse, long-term, small, robust teams. First strategy is to survey your class. Now we're halfway through the semesters, so chances are you probably have a good handle on some of your students' interests, maybe their learning styles. But I wanted to share with you a resource that we've put together, which is a survey for motivation or for their drive language. So what motivates them? What drives them in their learning? And there are 4 main areas. Is it relatedness? It's how they enjoy working together, that interpersonal connection. Is it more autonomous, where they really like to make those decisions themselves and work by themselves? Is it more of a mastery motivation, where those are your students that are looking for that A, or they really want to fully understand a concept? Or Are they more purpose-driven? They want to look outside of that project and what they're doing, and how does it make the world better? What is the purpose for what they're doing? So that's one way to create diversity in your groups, is looking at what motivates your students. And that strategy, by the way, is in the handout that is in that kind of webinar control panel as well. Another strategy to help create your diverse, small, long-term teams is have your students apply for roles. Now, I love this because not only does it handle that accountability factor, but it also gives the students choice, which makes them more engaged. And this is also a great way to create your diverse teams, because this is an interest. They're going to apply for roles that they're interested in. So one way to do that is to send out a Google form. You know, maybe your project, you have a research consultant or a project manager. Maybe there's a tech director or a journalism specialist. Have them fill out that form, give a reason for why they should be considered that, and then you can pair them or match those groups up according to those roles. Another way to consider doing that is have the students create a short little interview video, maybe only 15 or 30 seconds, but something that you can watch and then identify those groups that way. So once you've created those robust teams, accounting for diversity, making sure they're working on more long-term types of engagements, and they're roughly 2 to 4, we need to establish those team norms. Because it's one thing to have a team, but then when they get together and they're all staring at each other and not sure how to interact, we need to provide guidance for them. So let's establish team norms. A great way to do that is to start off with a low stakes activity. So get your groups together, have students get into their groups of either 2 or 4, and have them work on a challenge together. Maybe it's an engineering challenge, maybe it's a virtual challenge. And ask them, how did it go? What was successful in your group? And then craft those norms together, co-develop those norms, and have them put around your classroom. Make sure the students have them, whether it's in your virtual, Google Classroom, or it's, on your bulletin board. But making sure you're referring to them frequently and they get those out when it's time to meet with their teams. And then use those norms to create collaboration rubrics, to allow your students the opportunity to assess how are they doing in their group and how is their group doing as a whole. So I'm going to share with you some strategies to help with establishing team norms. The first strategy, and this is one of my favorites in establishing group norms, is having them conduct an engineering challenge. And it could be just a really quick, simple engineering challenge like the spaghetti challenge, where the students have noodles, a marshmallow, tape, string, and scissors, and they get 20 minutes and they have to build the tallest freestanding tower. Or it could be something like from our What's in Your Water project-based learning unit, where the students are given a container of water and they have to engineer a divider to keep pollution, which is food coloring, from going from one end of the container to the other. Now, currently, this might not work in your classroom with sharing of supplies, or maybe you're virtual. So one way to consider this is maybe each of the students have the supplies and then they work together on their plan. So they're communicating what they might be doing, but they might not all be manipulating the same materials. And considering possibly doing this virtually if the students have access to these supplies at home, and putting them in breakout rooms to try to solve this engineering challenge. But if these types of hands-on engineering challenges don't work for you in your current environment, another way to think about that is to do this all virtually, to have them do these challenges virtually, like a virtual scavenger hunt. These are great ways to get them to problem solve and tying that to your content. And I've provided some resources again in the handout, so you can use those as you see fit. They're the science one that I have on the screen there. That's where they have to answer clues. They have to answer riddles. And then they have to go find those items, whether they find them in their house and take a picture, or they have to find them online, and then they have to report out as a team. Another virtual challenge would be a virtual escape room. And there's quite a few free ones available online. Again, I put that in your handout. And have them work in a breakout room and go through this escape room together. So these are just great problem solving challenges, but the most important thing that you want your students to get out of it is being to understand what are the successes and challenges of working together or working collaboratively, and out of that building the norms. So ask those two questions. What made your team successful and what were your challenges? Because those answers to those two questions will help you develop those team norms. Now, once those team norms have been developed, agreed upon, and they're posted, you're referring to them frequently, you can use that to craft those collaboration rubrics. And this is what's going to allow the students now to really assess how they're doing, working in collaborative settings. Are they taking responsibility? Are they helping their team? Are they respecting others? And then have them assess, how is the group doing as a whole? How do they feel? Do they feel that the group is following the norms? Do they feel that the group is organizing their work? And do they feel that the group is working as a whole team? And what's really powerful is for the students to take that assessment of the group and share it with everybody else in their group, because there probably is going to be some discrepancies, and having some conversation, respectful discourse about that, and where are some areas that maybe the group needs to improve on in the norms, and making a plan to do that. We looked at establishing norms, building those robust teams, but now we want to focus on the management. So you've got your diverse, robust teams, you've got your norms in place, the students know what's expected of them, but they get into their group, they're not quite sure where to start. And this is where the management piece comes in, because project management is something that's going to never go away. It's something that's going to follow them in different areas of their life. So model for students the importance of project management in different contexts. You can bring your own examples of project management in. I mean, lessons don't plan themselves, right? I mean, there's a lot of planning that goes into your lessons every day. There's planning that goes into parties, birthday parties, weddings. There's project management, think about your local companies. Here around us, we have a lot of automotive companies. So door handles just don't make themselves. There's a whole process involved and due dates and people that are responsible for. And so showing them those examples, that real life skill. Helping them understand not only the importance, but how to actually create a project plan, which might require some scaffolding. So maybe for that first one in their group, you work with them on that together. And then eventually you can turn over the keys to them and then allow the students control in that planning process. That way they can track their own progress and their own growth. And now they have a focus, they have a direction. Every time they meet, they're pulling out their project plan. So I wanted to share with you a couple of strategies for that. First is one of my favorite management strategies when students are working together in groups, and those are work logs. And these are a couple that we've put together, and they are, again, in the handout. But I'd like to have my students assess kind of their goals individually and their individual responsibility within that project. So they write down their goals, they talk about what they've accomplished, they talk about any wonderful mistakes that they've made, what they've learned, and what they need to do next as part of that process. And then I also have in their groups that the students create a group work plan. So they identify what are the different pieces that need to get finished, when does it need to get finished by, and who's doing which part. So every time they get together as a group, the first thing they do is they pull out that group work plan, they take a look at it, they look to see where they're at, where they need to go, and it just helps give them direction. Another way to look at project management is maybe using some tech tools, something like Google Sheets, from your older students, that might work for them to list out the task, who's doing it, due date, and status. Just a real simple way to organize the tasks and who's doing what. If you want to take it up a notch, look outside of maybe Google Sheets and some online programs like Trello. That's easy to use, and also it's a great project management tool for particularly your older students for that. And the last strategy I want to share with helping support your groups as they function together is meeting agendas. And what I would do is I would have the student that was my captain or my project manager, what the role that they applied for and they received, they would be responsible for crafting the meeting agenda anytime their groups met. And it could be just as simple as, number one, we're going to update the group work plan. Number two, we're going to provide feedback on, whatever it is that they need to provide feedback on. Number three, we're going to finish this up together. And so just something very simple, so it gives them direction, it gives them focus every time they meet. So again, they're not just coming together and not talking or just not sure what to do. So modeling that, showing them the importance of agendas and helping to direct work. Okay, so it's time for another poll. And I talked about creating robust teams, talked about establishing norms, and I talked about some strategies for managing those teams, those robust teams. So which one of those might you try? Surveying your class, having your students apply for roles, engineering or virtual challenges to build norms, some collaboration rubrics to assess how they're doing working together, and work logs or meeting agendas.
Right, so it looks like all strategies are going to be used, which is awesome. But at 60% is survey your class, followed by engineering or virtual challenges to build norms, and work logs are both at 53%. Behind that, we have collaboration rubrics at 40%, and then apply for roles at 27%.
Okay, excellent. So like I said, hopefully there's something for everybody there that you can try in your classes. Fantastic, thank you so much. Okay, so we looked at the first part of our agenda as how to really build those rock star cooperative learning experiences for our students. And we looked at those three areas of building robust teams, establishing the norms, and managing that individual and group activities. So let's shift gears and take a look at those tech tools. So I'm going to share 6 tools to make distance learning more collaborative. Now, I would say this is any learning because this could be done in person or if you're virtual learning. And I am a Google Classroom teacher, tried and true. Like that is my go-to collaborative tools. So I wasn't going to focus on Google because that might be a little bit more common, or many people out there are probably very familiar and more familiar than me with Google. So I wanted to share some tools that I found that outside of Google that might work for you and for maybe more specific types of activities you might be doing with your students, allowing them to collaborate. The first one is Kami, and I really love this one. It's an interactive markup tool where students can get in there and they can do text to speech, they can comment, they can draw, they can add stickers, they can add images. It's compatible for Google Classroom, Schoology, or Canvas LMS systems. And my absolute favorite tool or function of this tool is it can manipulate a PDF or static document. So if you have a PDF and you're struggling with how to get into your students' hands so they can manipulate it, you can upload it right into here and it allows you to do that. So fantastic. That's Kami. The second tool is actually 2 tools, but they have the same function, so that's why I kind of put them together here. And that's Padlet and Nearpod Collaborate. Now, Padlet's been around for a while, but I did want to share this one because just found it very powerful for students to be able to give each other feedback, share ideas. It's great for brainstorming. Virtual bulletin board, as you see in that picture. This is actually a picture of our student programs sharing their workout in a summer camp this past summer. We also have our scientists that we've connected with that have access to our students' Padlets, so the students can ask questions to the scientists and get answers. So that's really a powerful tool. Now, Nearpod Collaborate, I wanted to put that in there because if you are familiar with Nearpod or you'd like to learn more about Nearpod, Nearpod is a really incredible, very comprehensive presentation tool that allows you to share your content with your students, but also to assess your students in that. There's polls, there's short answers that the students can answer questions to. They also have the opportunity to collaborate, like these virtual bulletin boards. And what I really like about both Nearpod Collaborate and Padlet is that you can have a setting where it requires approval before posting, because we always know that that is a concern. So again, these are great kind of virtual bulletin board tools to get your students talking, brainstorming together. And what I found out for Nearpod Collaborate, that for me, it works better asynchronously than it does live, because it's hard for the students to get from the Zoom tab to the the Nearpod tab on their browser. So I found that the asynchronous, at least for sometimes the younger students, works a little bit better than the synchronous. Another tool I wanted to share with you is Jamboard or whiteboard.chat. Again, they're two tools with the same function. It's a virtual whiteboard, it's interactive, it's great for brainstorming. I did, as you can see that picture of the wire and bulb and battery. I did a virtual brain sketch with students, because typically we do it with papers and we pass them around. Well, that couldn't happen. So have one student start out doing their sketch and labeling, then they pass it off or share it to the next student and just kind of work through that brain sketch that way. So it can still have that collaborative experience just in that virtual setting of that activity. I wanted to bring up breakout rooms, and so I know probably many of you are very familiar with them, have been doing them, but just want to recognize that power of having the students connect with each other virtually, and to do that either through Zoom, which has that built in, or through Google Meets, which takes a little bit more kind of manual work behind the scenes, but it definitely can be done, and it's a great way just to check in on your groups, check in on your students, see how they're doing too, as you can pop into those different break rooms as they're working collaboratively. I have in the resources, I also put some help or some tips in order to work with both Zoom and Google Meet for that breakout rooms if you're interested. Adobe Spark. This is a really great professional looking, polished type of presentation tool where students can create visual stories, presentations, web pages, videos. I was surprised at how user-friendly it was. The only hiccup with Adobe Spark is that only one student can edit at a time, but they are working on it. So, if that's something that interests you, definitely check that out. And then lastly, Book Creator. And I just love this. For the free version, and all these that I've talked about have free versions available. For the free version, you get a library, and the students can access your teacher library, and then they can create and read other students' books. They can add images, shapes, text, audio, video. You can see they have different layouts, that you can see it's a comic book layout. If you do want them to be able to collaborate with each other on the books, there is a cost to that as well. So I just wanted to bring that up. But again, it was a pretty cool tool, and it is geared for all ages. So of those tech tools, which of these tech tools are you most excited to try? Robin's going to go ahead and open up that poll. We've got the Cami, that interactive markup tool, Padlet, Nearpod, the digital bulletin board, Jamboard or whiteboard, Adobe Spark, the presentation tool, or Book Creator.
All right, looks like, these are obviously awesome tech tools, so everyone's going to use a little bit of everything, but we have Book Creator at 39%.
Okay.
Followed by Adobe Spark at 33%. And then Cami, Padlet, and Jamboard all at 28%, so all really close.
Excellent. Well, fantastic. So glad. So hopefully you did find a new tech tool to try out. So we'd love to keep the conversation going. So if you like what you heard, please tell your administrator about us and bring us to your school in person or virtually. Again, we'd love to connect with you and help you out in your professional development needs. Also like to invite you to our next webinar. It's next month, February 17th. Amplify their voices, promote student agency in any learning environment. And lastly, I just want to thank you so much for joining me tonight. And I also would like to give you an opportunity to win one of those free Blue Apple projects, those PBL units that I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar. We have 10 different projects to pick from. They have been aligned grades K-8. And if you send me your favorite collaboration tip or strategy, you can be entered to win a free PBL project. So email me at dawn.mccotter@vaei.org by tomorrow to be entered. And I will send out a follow-up email Friday that will include the name of the winner. So I'd love to hear about your tips and get you entered to win that drawing. I just want to thank you so much for your time. I hope you have a wonderful end to your week and a fantastic beginning to your second semester. Take care, everyone, and have a great evening.